I reserved our usual table, I said, pulling out the chair for Chloe. The corner one by the window. Chloe didn't smile. She sat down, her posture stiff, her purse clutched tightly in her lap. The soft ambient lighting of the silver bistro usually made her eyes sparkle, but tonight she looked somewhere else entirely. "Thanks, Ethan," she murmured, looking down at the white tablecloth. I sat across from her and reached for her hand. "Are you okay? You've been quiet all week. Is the wedding stress getting to you? Because if the florist is giving you trouble again, I can call them tomorrow." "Ethan, stop," she said softly. She pulled her hand away before I could touch her fingers. My heart did a strange, heavy drop. "What's wrong?" "We need to talk," Chloe said. It was the phrase every man dreads, but 3 weeks before our wedding, it felt like a bucket of ice water poured directly over my head. I tried to chuckle, though my throat suddenly felt dry. "That sounds serious. Did something happen with the venue?" Chloe reached into her handbag. She didn't look me in the eye as her fingers searched for something. When she brought her hand back up, she placed a small velvet box on the table between us. She pushed it toward me. I stared at the box. The velvet was slightly worn at the corners. I had spent 6 months saving every spare dollar from my software job to buy that ring. "Chloe, what is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't do this, Ethan," she said, her tone unnervingly flat. "I'm calling off the wedding." The background noise of the restaurant, the clinking silverware, the murmur of happy couples, the soft jazz playing overhead, instantly muted into static. "Is this a joke?" I forced out, trying to catch her gaze. "We just picked out the cake yesterday. We signed the lease on the new apartment last Friday. What are you talking about?" "It's not a joke," Chloe said. She finally looked at me, and there was no warmth left in her eyes. Julian came back. The name hit me like a physical blow. Julian Vance. Her college ex-boyfriend. The guy whose family owned half the commercial real estate downtown. The billionaire heir who had left her 3 years ago to move to Europe without looking back. "Julian?" I repeated, my brain struggling to connect the dots. "Julian left you." "I was the one who picked up the pieces, Chloe. I was the one who stayed." "Julian made a mistake and he knows it now," Chloe replied, her defense coming up instantly. "He came back to town last week, Ethan. He reached out to me." "And you met him behind my back?" My voice cracked slightly. "We talked," she corrected sharply. "He apologized for everything. He's changed. He's taking over his family's logistics empire, and he offered me a life, Ethan. A real life. A life you simply can't give me." "A life I can't give you?" Tears pricked the edges of my eyes, but anger was rapidly replacing the sadness. "I worked 80 hours a week so we could buy a home. I gave you everything I had. And I appreciate that truly," Chloe said, sounding almost patronizing. "You're a good man, Ethan. You're stable. But stable isn't enough anymore. Julian bought a penthouse overlooking the harbor. He bought me a car yesterday. He can give me security instantly. With you it's always next year, or once the startup takes off. I don't want to wait 10 years to live comfortably. So 3 years of us means nothing because a rich guy threw a car at you?" I demanded, leaning over the table. "Don't lower your voice at me," Chloe sneered, her sweet facade completely melting away. "Be realistic. Look at yourself. You're drowning in non-refundable wedding deposits that you put on your credit card. How are we supposed to start a life like that? I paid those deposits for us." I yelled softly, gripping the edge of the table. Chloe stood up, grabbing her designer bag, a bag I now realized I hadn't bought her. "Keep the ring. Sell it. Use it to cover the venue fees. I'm moving my things out of the apartment tonight while you're here." "Chloe, wait." "Goodbye, Ethan," she said, turning on her heel. "Don't call me." I sat frozen as she walked out the front doors of the restaurant. The waiter approached cautiously a few moments later, placing the bill on the table. I didn't even look at it. I just stared at the velvet box. 10 minutes later, my phone chimed. It was a call from Marcus. "Hey, Ethan." Marcus's cheerful voice bounced through the speaker as I answered. "Did you guys finish dinner? I was thinking we could grab a beer after." "She left me, Marcus," I interrupted, staring blankly at the window. A long pause followed on the line. "What? What do you mean she left you?" "Chloe called off the wedding," I said, my voice hollow. "Julian Vance is back. She went with him." "Julian? That arrogant trust fund jerk." Marcus cursed loudly over the phone. "Where are you right now? Stay right there. I'm coming to get you." 20 minutes later, Marcus slid into the booth opposite me. He took one look at my face, then at the ring box on the table, and sighed heavily. I'm so sorry, man, Marcus said quietly. Did she really just walk out? She said I couldn't provide the life she wanted, I whispered, resting my head in my hands. She said Julian could give her security right now. Security? That guy changes girlfriends like he changes sports cars, Marcus said angrily. He's trash, Ethan. And honestly, if Chloe walked away after 3 years for a shiny bank account, she's trash too. I spent everything on this wedding, Marcus, I admitted, looking up. The deposits are non-refundable. The venue, the caterers, the band. I'm ruined. Marcus reached out and tapped my shoulder. We'll figure it out. You're the best software developer I know. You built your startup from scratch. Before I could answer, Marcus's phone buzzed with a notification. He looked down at his screen, and his expression instantly darkened. What is it? I asked. Marcus hesitated, trying to lock his phone screen. Nothing. Don't worry about it. Marcus, show me. Reluctantly, Marcus flipped his phone over and pushed it across the table. It was an Instagram post from 10 minutes ago. It showed Chloe dressed in a sparkling evening gown, holding a glass of champagne inside a high-end club. Julian Vance was standing behind her, his arm wrapped tightly around her waist. The caption read, "Back where I belong. Engaged to the love of my life at Julian Vance." The photo already had thousands of likes. My world, everything I had carefully built and believed in, officially shattered into pieces right then and there. I spent the next 3 days in front of my computer monitors, letting the glow of the code burn away the sting of Chloe's betrayal. Work was the only thing I could control. On Thursday morning, Marcus walked into my small startup office, holding 2 large coffee cups and a thick stack of printed financial papers. "Have you slept at all?" he asked, setting a mug on my desk. "Sleep doesn't pay back wedding venue deposits," I said, without taking my eyes off the lines of code scrolling across my screen. "I'm clearing out our joint accounts today. I need to close the remaining balances." Marcus pulled up a rolling chair and sat beside me. "About those accounts, Ethan. I spent last night reviewing the bank statements from the joint wedding fund you shared with Chloe. We have a major problem." I stopped typing and looked at him. "What kind of problem? Did she take her share already?" "Not just her share," Marcus said, laying a spreadsheet over my keyboard. "Look at the withdrawal history from 2 weeks ago. Chloe authorized a transfer of $20,000 out of your shared savings directly into a third-party escrow account." I grabbed the paper, scanning the numbers. 20,000? Why would she move that kind of cash right before breaking up with me? "Because it wasn't just her idea," Marcus answered, pointing at a corporate entity name listed in the fine print. "That escrow account is owned by Vance Logistics, Julian's company." My stomach turned into a tight knot. Why is Julian touching my wedding savings? "I dug deeper into the public filings this morning," Marcus said, leaning closer. "Vance Logistics is launching a new automated tracking platform next month. It's built on the exact same architecture as your proprietary logistics software, Ethan. The software you've been pitching to local investors." "That's impossible," I said, shaking my head in disbelief. "My code is locked down. Only my inner circle has access." I froze mid-sentence. My mind flashed back to 3 months ago, when Chloe had asked to borrow my backup hard drive to store her design portfolios. She gave him my core architecture, I whispered, the realization hitting me like a punch to the chest. "It gets worse," Marcus said quietly. "An anonymous holding firm linked to Vance Logistics filed a lowball acquisition offer for your startup yesterday afternoon. They offered $50,000 for your entire patent portfolio. They know you're broke from the canceled wedding, Ethan. They think you're desperate enough to take the cash to cover your debts." I stared at the offer sheet Marcus pulled from his stack. Julian hadn't just taken my fiancée because he missed her. He had systematically dismantled my personal and financial life so he could steal my life's work for pennies on the dollar. "That smug bastard," I muttered, my hands shaking as I gripped the edges of the desk. "He didn't just want Chloe. He wanted to break me so I couldn't compete with his launch." "So what's the move?" Marcus asked, his eyes sharp. "We can file an injunction right now. I can draft a civil suit for breach of fiduciary duty against Chloe and sue Julian for corporate espionage." "No," I said instantly. Marcus blinked in surprise. "No? Ethan, they stole your code and tried to ruin you. If we file a lawsuit today, Julian's legal team will drag it out in court for years," I explained, feeling a strange, cold calm settle over me. "He has billions. I have nothing. He'll bleed me dry on legal fees before we ever see a courtroom." "So you're just going to let him buy your patents?" Marcus demanded. "Of course not," I replied, standing up and walking over to the whiteboard on the wall. Julian thinks I'm a broken, heartbroken mess who is about to go bankrupt. He thinks I'm weak. I'm going to let him keep believing that. Ethan, talk to me. What are you planning? I grabbed a marker and drew a line right down the center of the board. The software Chloe copied was my prototype from 6 months ago. It has a critical security flaw in the data routing protocol, one I fixed in my private local build last week. Marcus grinned slowly as the light bulb went on in his head. They don't know about the patch. Exactly, I said, capping the marker. If Julian launches his logistics platform using that stolen code, his system will crash the moment it handles high-volume live data. I'm going to let him launch. And what about Chloe? Marcus asked, watching me closely. She called your cell 3 times while I was walking in. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. Her name was flashing on the screen with a text message underneath. Ethan, we need to sign the apartment release forms. Can we talk? I didn't open the message. Instead, I pressed her name, selected options, and hit block contact. Chloe doesn't exist to me anymore, I said, tossing the phone onto the desk. She made her choice based on greed. Let her enjoy Julian's money while it lasts. That's a cold shift, man, Marcus said softly. Are you sure you're okay? I've never been clearer, I said, looking at the technical blueprints pinned to my wall. Julian wants to play corporate games using my life as a pawn. But he forgot one simple thing. What's that? He bought the stolen blueprints, I said, meeting Marcus's gaze with absolute focus. But I'm the one who built the machine. Marcus smiled, standing up and extending his hand. All right, partner. Where do we start? We reject their acquisition offer, I said, shaking his hand firmly. And then we finish building the patch that buries them. Fix your tie, Ethan, Marcus said, adjusting his own cuffs as we stepped out of the valet line. Tonight isn't about looking back. It's about letting them see you stand tall. I'm fine, Marcus, I replied, taking a deep breath as the grand entrance of the Tech Vanguard Gala towered above us. I came here for business, not a dramatic scene. Good, Marcus muttered, handing our passes to the usher. Because Julian Vance bought 3 front-row tables tonight. He and Chloe are making their official debut as high society's new golden couple. We entered the packed ballroom. Crystal chandeliers glittered above, but my focus remained sharp. I didn't care about the flash or the champagne. I was here to secure funding for my software before Vance Logistics launched their broken platform. I'm going to grab us drinks, Marcus said, tapping my shoulder. Try not to punch anyone while I'm gone. I chuckled faintly. No promises. As Marcus walked off toward the bar, a familiar scent of vanilla perfume drifted toward me. I turned around to see Chloe standing a few feet away, holding a glass of wine. She wore an emerald gown that clearly cost more than my entire monthly rent. Ethan, she said, her voice dripping with artificial surprise. What are you doing here? I didn't think you could afford a ticket to an event like this. It's a public industry event, Chloe, I answered evenly, keeping my hands resting casually in my pockets. I was invited. She stepped closer, glancing around nervously before lowering her voice. Look, Ethan, about the apartment keys and your messages. You blocked my number. That was really immature. You made your choice 3 weeks ago, I said calmly. I simply respected it. Chloe blinked, clearly startled by my lack of anger. She shifted her weight, expecting me to cry or plead. You don't have to pretend you're fine, Ethan. I know this must be painful for you seeing me here with Julian. But you need to accept that we live in different worlds now. I accept it completely, I said with a faint, polite smile. And I genuinely wish you the best with your new world. You're not mad? She asked, her eyebrows furrowing with frustration. You're not going to yell at me or ask why? Why would I? I replied, looking directly into her eyes. You showed me who you are. Why would I be angry at someone for showing me their true face? Before she could respond, a woman in an elegant black suit stepped out from behind a nearby marble pillar. She possessed a commanding presence that immediately drew attention. Well said, young man, the woman said, her voice sharp and refined. She held a champagne glass with practiced poise. Indifference is always far more effective than anger. Chloe's face drained of color instantly. Mrs. Vance. Hello, Chloe dear, Victoria Vance said with a cold, polite nod. I see you've already adapted to spending my late husband's legacy. Chloe swallowed hard, taking a step back. Julian is looking for me at our table. I should go. She gave me one last bewildered look before rushing off across the floor. I turned toward the older woman. Victoria Vance? The one and only, she said, offering a hand. And you must be Ethan Miller, the brilliant founder of Miller Tech. I shook her hand, surprised. You know who I am? Of course I do, Victoria replied, motioning toward a quiet terrace outside the hall. Walk with me, Ethan. Away from these vultures. I followed her out onto the terrace. The cool night air felt refreshing after the hot ballroom. My stepson Julian thinks he runs the family empire now, Victoria said quietly, leaning against the stone balcony railing. He acts like a visionary, but all he does is steal ideas, buy out rivals, and destroy everything my husband built with honest sweat. He's certainly trying to buy my patents, I admitted. His firm sent a lowball acquisition offer yesterday. Don't sell, Victoria snapped, her eyes flashing with determination. Julian doesn't want your software because he respects it. He wants it because Vance Logistics is bleeding money internally. His entire new platform is a house of cards. I know, I said softly. He copied my early prototype. He doesn't know about the routing flaw in the code. Victoria smiled, a sharp, calculating expression that told me she was far ahead of the game. I knew I liked you. Julian thinks he can parade his money and his new trophies around town to hide his failures, but I won't let him ruin this family's name. What are you proposing, Mrs. Vance? I asked. Call me Victoria, she corrected. I want to invest directly in your startup, Ethan. Fully fund your final build, give you access to our private distribution network, and ensure your platform launches before Julian's stolen version goes live. My heart hammered against my ribs. You want to back my company against your own stepson? I want to save my husband's legacy from a spoiled brat, Victoria said flatly. Julian took your fiancée in your early design. Let's see how well he survives when you take his entire market share. Marcus stepped out onto the terrace, holding 2 drinks, his eyes wide as he realized who I was talking to. Ethan? Is everything okay? Everything is perfect, Marcus, I said, turning back to Victoria with complete confidence. Let's draw up the contracts tomorrow morning. Victoria clinked her glass against mine. To clean hands and smart investments, Ethan. I took a sip of my drink, looking back inside the glass ballroom. Across the room, Chloe was whispering nervously into Julian's ear while he stared out at the balcony with a dark scowl. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel a trace of pain. The game had officially changed. Check your secure inbox right now, Victoria said, her voice sharp over the encrypted call. I just transferred the files. I tapped my laptop keyboard, opening the incoming folder. What am I looking at, Victoria? Proof, she replied flatly. 10 years of offshore accounts, illegal wire transfers, and evidence that Julian bribed corporate officials to cover up stolen patent filings, including yours. Marcus leaned over my chair, staring at the screen as rows of bank numbers illuminated the room. This is insane, Ethan. If these numbers are real, Julian isn't just a dishonest businessman. He's committing massive federal fraud. They are completely real, Victoria affirmed. My late husband kept private records before Julian took control. Julian thought he hid everything behind shell companies, but he made mistakes. Why give this to us now? I asked, scrolling through the legal documents. Because Julian realized our investment contract went through yesterday, Victoria said smoothly. He's panicked, Ethan. He's organizing a hostile takeover bid on your company before the week ends. Take those files to federal prosecutors before he pushes you out. Consider it done, I said. Thank you, Victoria. Don't thank me yet, she warned before hanging up. Finish him. I closed the laptop, letting out a long breath. Marcus patted my back. I'll draft the cover letter for the federal investigators right away. We can submit the whole package tomorrow morning. Sounds good, I said. Let's call it a night. Marcus grabbed his jacket and walked out, leaving me alone in the quiet office. I packed my bag and drove home. It was nearly midnight when my phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. I looked down, expecting Marcus, but an unlisted number flashed across the screen. I picked it up. Hello, I said. A heavy sob echoed through the speaker. Ethan? Please don't hang up. My hand froze. Chloe? Ethan, please? I need someone to talk to, she wept, her voice trembling uncontrollably. I made a terrible mistake. A horrible mistake. I stood still by the counter. Chloe, it's midnight. What are you talking about? Julian, he's awful, Ethan, she sobbed into the phone. He yelled at me tonight in front of his board members. He told me I was just a trophy he bought to humiliate you. He tracks my car, he checks my messages, and he locked my credit cards because I went to lunch with my mother. You chose him, Chloe, I said, keeping my tone quiet and steady. You told me 3 weeks ago that he offered you security. I was wrong, she cried desperately. He doesn't love me. He never loved me. He just wanted to hurt you because he knew you were smarter than him. He treats me like property, Ethan. I miss you. I miss how gentle you were. Can I please come over? Just for tonight? No, I said firmly. Ethan, please, she begged, her voice cracking. I have nowhere else to go. I'm sitting in my car outside a convenience store. Please help me. Chloe, listen to me very carefully, I said, holding the phone tightly. When you walked out of that restaurant, you made your decision. You threw away 3 years of trust for a shiny lifestyle. You can't run back to me now just because the golden cage turned out to be cold. So you're just abandoning me? She asked, her sorrow turning into bitter disbelief. After everything we shared? You abandoned us first, I replied softly. Call a hotel, Chloe. Call your family. But do not call me again. I ended the call and placed the phone face down on the counter. The pain that used to tear through my chest was gone, replaced by a strange, quiet clarity. The next morning, Marcus slammed my office door open, holding his tablet. Ethan, turn on the business news right now. I snatched my remote and clicked the wall television on. A news anchor stood in front of Vance Logistics headquarters. Breaking news this morning as Vance Logistics attempts a surprise hostile takeover of local tech startup Miller Tech, the reporter announced. Julian Vance spoke briefly outside his office, claiming he will own the rights to Miller Tech's entire inventory by the end of the day. He really thinks he can bully us, Marcus spat, tapping his screen. He filed the buyout papers with the city board an hour ago. Let him try, I said, pulling out a USB drive containing Victoria's encrypted files. Is the meeting with Detective Hawkins and the federal prosecutor set? They're waiting for us at the federal building right now, Marcus confirmed, handing me my coat. Julian has no idea what's coming. He's so focused on taking my company, I said, grabbing the drive from my desk. He hasn't realized his own empire is about to burn. We walked out of the office together, heading straight toward the courthouse steps. The trap was set and Julian Vance was walking right into it. Are you ready for this? Marcus asked, checking his watch as we stood near the grand entrance of the Starlight Ballroom. Ready as I'll ever be, I replied, adjusting my suit jacket. Is Detective Hawkins in position? A tall man in a dark trench coat stepped out from the shadows of the corridor, nodding at us. Everything is set, Mr. Miller. My team has the perimeter secured. Thank you, Detective, I said, offering a firm handshake. Let's make this quick. Marcus looked through the glass doors into the lavish ballroom. Look at them. They're cutting the champagne tower right now. Julian looks like he owns the entire world. Not for much longer, Detective Hawkins said, his voice flat and professional. Let's go inside. We walked through the double doors into the blinding lights of the ballroom. Hundreds of high society guests were dressed in designer tuxedos and glittering evening gowns, clapping as Julian Vance raised a glass of champagne, with Chloe standing proudly by his side in a shimmering silver dress. To the future of Vance Logistics, Julian announced loudly into the microphone, flashing an arrogant smile. And to the woman who inspires every success I achieve. Applause erupted across the room. Chloe beamed, raising her own glass, completely unaware of the storm breaking behind her. I stepped forward, raising my voice just enough to cut through the fading applause. I wouldn't drink that champagne just yet, Julian. The room fell instantly silent. Heads whipped around and dozens of pairs of eyes locked onto me. Julian's smile vanished, replaced by a dark, furious scowl as he lowered the microphone. What is he doing here? Chloe whispered loudly, her face turning pale. Julian handed the mic to a nearby waiter and stepped off the raised stage, walking directly toward me with heavy, aggressive strides. You have a lot of nerve showing your face here, Ethan. Did you sneak in, or are you just begging for more humiliation? Neither, I said calmly, standing my ground. I'm just here to watch the show. Throw him out, Julian snarled, signaling 2 private security guards standing near the bar. Get this pathetic loser out of my sight before I have him thrown in jail. Before the guards could take a step forward, Detective Hawkins flashed his federal badge, stepping directly between Julian and me. Federal agents, Hawkins announced, his deep voice carrying across the silent ballroom. Nobody moves. Julian froze, his expression shifting from anger to genuine confusion. Federal agents? What is the meaning of this? This is a private event. Julian Vance, Hawkins said, pulling a folded document from his coat pocket. You are under investigation for corporate tax fraud, extensive wire fraud, and systemic money laundering through offshore shell companies. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Whispers broke out instantly among the high society guests, and several reporters near the back began flashing their cameras frantically. "This is completely absurd," Julian shouted, his face turning red with panic. "I am the CEO of Vance Logistics. You can't just barge in here. We have bank records, signed wire transfers, and internal communications proving you systematically looted corporate accounts and stole proprietary patents," Hawkins interrupted, signaling to the other agents behind him. 3 federal agents moved forward, surrounding Julian. "Get your hands off me," Julian thrashed, trying to pull away as cold steel handcuffs snapped around his wrists. "Do you know who my father was? My lawyers will ruin you by morning." "Your lawyers won't be able to help you," Hawkins replied coolly, pushing Julian's arms down. "Every asset, personal account, and corporate subsidiary tied to Vance Logistics has been legally frozen by order of the federal court as of 10 minutes ago." Chloe dropped her champagne glass. It shattered loudly against the marble floor, the golden liquid splashing across the hem of her expensive silver gown. "Frozen?" Chloe choked out, her voice trembling as she rushed off the stage toward Julian. "What do you mean frozen? Our accounts? My cards?" "Stay back, miss," an agent warned, blocking her path. "Julian, tell them it's a mistake," Chloe cried, ignoring the agent and grabbing Julian's arm. "Tell them our accounts aren't frozen. We have the gala bills, the penthouse lease, everything is charged to the company." Julian looked down at her, his arrogance entirely gone, replaced by bitter contempt. "Get away from me, you parasite. This is all your fault. If you hadn't demanded a lavish lifestyle I had to steal to pay for, none of this would have happened." Chloe staggered backward as if she had been physically struck. "My fault? I left Ethan for you. Then go back to him because I'm finished," Julian yelled, struggling against the agents as they hauled him toward the exit. Camera flashes blinded the room as the news crews recorded every second of the billionaire's total collapse. The heavy oak doors slammed shut behind them, leaving the ballroom in stunned, absolute silence. I turned to leave, walking slowly toward the exit. "Ethan." I stopped and looked back. Chloe was standing alone in the center of the massive room, surrounded by hundreds of wealthy elites who were now whispering behind their hands and pointing at her. Her expensive gown looked heavy and suffocating under the bright chandelier lights. She had no money, no defense team, no friends left in this room, and nowhere left to run. "Ethan, please," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears as she took a desperate step toward me. "Please, talk to me." I looked at her for a long, quiet moment, feeling nothing at all, no anger, no bitterness, not even pity. Just a cold, empty space where grief used to live. Marcus appeared beside me, looking at the silent room. "Come on, Ethan," Marcus said quietly. "Let's leave her to the wreckage." "Yeah," I replied, watching Chloe break down under the lights. "Let's go." "You chose your world, Chloe," I muttered quietly, turning my back on her for the final time. "Enjoy it." I slowly walked out the double-glass doors into the cool night air, leaving her standing entirely alone in the ruins of the empty life she had traded everything to build. 6 months passed in a blur of endless lines of code, late-night coffee, and rapid growth. My tech startup had moved into a bright, spacious office downtown, leaving behind the small, cramped room where Marcus and I first plotted our survival. "The signed contract just came through from corporate legal," Marcus said, stepping into my glass-walled corner office. He held up a thick blue folder, wearing a proud, wide smile. "Victoria Vance officially approved the master partnership agreement. That means Miller Tech is now the exclusive logistics software provider for the entire restructured Vance enterprise," I said, leaning back in my leather desk chair. "We actually pulled it off." "We did," Marcus chuckled, tossing the folder onto my desk. "Victoria wiped out the remaining corrupt executives, restructured the entire firm, and handed us the primary contract. Julian is currently sitting in a federal prison waiting for his trial, and his legal team is dropping like flies because his assets are still frozen." "It's over," I said, looking out the large glass window at the skyline below. "The nightmare is finally over." "Speaking of the past." Marcus hesitated, his smiling expression quickly turning serious as he gestured toward the reception desk outside. "You have a visitor in the lobby. She's been waiting for almost an hour." My heart didn't jump. It didn't race or drop into my stomach like it used to. "Chloe?" "Yeah," Marcus confirmed softly. "She wouldn't leave until she talked to you. Do you want me to have security walk her out?" "No," I replied calmly, standing up. "It's fine, Marcus. Send her in." Let's finish this properly. A minute later, the office door clicked open. Chloe walked in slowly. The expensive emerald dresses, sparkling jewels, and confident demeanor were completely gone. She wore a simple, faded coat, her hair tied back loosely, and deep dark circles shadowed her weary eyes. "Ethan," she whispered, stopping near the middle of the room, her hands nervously clutching her purse. "Thank you for seeing me." "Sit down, Chloe," I said politely, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. She sat on the very edge of the cushion, looking around my modern office with a mixture of awe and profound sorrow. "Your office is beautiful. I saw the news yesterday about your partnership with Victoria. You built everything you always promised you would." "It took a lot of hard work," I answered, keeping my voice quiet and measured. "What brings you here today?" "I wanted to apologize," Chloe said, her voice instantly cracking as tears welled up in her eyes. "I know words don't mean anything after what I did to you, Ethan. But I haven't been able to sleep for months." "You don't need to cry, Chloe," I said gently. "I ruined my entire life," she wept, wiping her cheek with a trembling hand. "When Julian's accounts were frozen, I lost everything. I couldn't pay the lease on the penthouse. The bank repossessed the car he gave me. My old friends won't answer my calls, and I had to move back into my parents' spare bedroom just to survive. I heard Vance Logistics collapsed completely," I noted. "Julian used me, Ethan," she sobbed, looking directly into my eyes with desperation. "He treated me like a trophy to mock you, and I was too blind and greedy to see it. Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. I threw away a genuine, loving man who cared for me for a fake life of luxury that vanished overnight." I sat across from her, listening quietly to her confession. 6 months ago, hearing these words would have given me a vengeful thrill. But sitting here now, looking at her broken state, I felt nothing but a quiet, solemn acceptance. "I spent 2 years building a future for us," I said softly. "I loved you, Chloe. I was willing to give you everything I had. But you measured my worth purely by my bank balance." "I was stupid," she begged, leaning forward across the desk. "I was so stupid, Ethan. Is there any chance? Can we ever start over? Even just as friends? I just want the old Ethan back." "The old Ethan died the night you handed back that ring at the restaurant," I replied calmly. "And the man sitting in front of you today has moved on." I pulled out a drawer in my desk and brought out a thin stack of legal documents, placing them between us. "What is this?" she asked timidly. "These are the final release papers for our old shared apartment lease," I explained, handing her a pen. "I paid off the remaining landlord fees and settled the outstanding utility bills last week. Once you sign this line right here, your name will be completely cleared from the debt." Chloe looked down at the paper, tears dripping onto the printed ink. "You paid off my share of the debt?" "I paid it because I wanted a clean break," I said firmly. "I don't hold any hatred toward you, Chloe. I don't want revenge and I don't wish you harm." "You don't hate me?" she whispered, shocked. "Hatred requires energy," I said, meeting her tearful gaze with absolute serenity. "I don't care enough to hate you anymore. I just want us to go our separate ways." Chloe slowly picked up the pen and signed her name on the bottom line. She stood up, holding her purse tightly, looking at me one last time. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. Goodbye." "Goodbye, Chloe," I said. "I truly hope you find peace." She turned and walked out of my office, her quiet footsteps fading down the hallway. I looked out the window at the sunny city skyline. True justice wasn't just watching Julian go to prison, nor was it watching Chloe drown in regret. True justice was building a successful, peaceful life where their choices no longer held any power over my heart.